Hello and welcome everybody to this new Team Developer 6.1 sneak peek webinar. First, before starting the fun with TD 6.1, I'd like to give you some updates, some information about Unify. If you didn't hear about us before, Unify is in the development tool and database product business since more than 30 years. We have a number of industry-first products available. Data Server, that was the first Unix SQL database. Excel was the first Unix 4GL tool for terminal-based applications. Later, SQL Base was the first DOS and Windows SQL database, long before SQL Server and others were available there. And then SQL Windows was the first Windows 4GL programming language for database business applications. Team Developer then became the first Windows 32-bit 4GL language available on the market, and that's the product we're going to talk about today. So Unify does have other divisions that I want to quickly mention here. There's one division which is called Unify Access 1, which offers archiving solutions. If you go to our website, you will find those. We also have Dages, e-discovery solutions. We have CipherSoft Oracle Forms to Java migration, and also Lotus Notes to .NET migration if you are interested in those. I'm your host today. My name is Martin Teetz. I'm the Unify product manager for Team Developer SQL Base and the other Unify enterprise products like Excel, Data Server, and NXJ. And I'm going to talk today about Team Developer, the development tool for business professionals. And basically, you, our customers, have decided for business power instead for generic power. So, Team Developer 6.1, this is all we're going to talk about. TD 6.1 introduces a new high productivity IDE. It introduces new and enhanced high usability GUI controls and powerful new .NET integration to leverage investments into both TD code and other .NET code. And that's really the part we are going to talk about today. So during the webinar, if you have questions, I'd like to ask you to put your questions into the question tool on the WebEx bar that has a question mark, and after the webinar, I will answer your questions. During the webinar, I won't be able to answer your questions. So, what does TD 6.1 bring? On the IDE side, a much improved outline active coding assistant, outline tabs, code documentation tool, and more. If you have seen the last webinar on the IDE and GUI, then you have seen that already. On the GUI part, we have introduced a new DBPipe chart control, a grid summary bar, named toolbars, and a lot more. .NET. What we are introducing here is first of all web services. We allow it to provide and consume web services, and I will show you that during this webinar. We are introducing .NET error handling with when exception, .NET for debugging for XBAP browser-based applications, and .NET for compilation. So a number of things that we have added to .NET to make the .NET integration of Team Developer a lot more powerful. So what you get, TD 6.1 .NET, consuming web services, providing .NET web services, local .NET exception handling using the new when exception method. You get a lot of .NET Explorer Enhancement, for example, support for multiple generated APLs and more. You get DBPipe for WPF desktop apps. DBPipe is, in my view, a very special industry-first technology coming from Unify that you might be looking to use. I will demo that later, which is, kind of a favorite baby of mine. You can use .NET connection strings to connect to databases now. We have Sybase support built into .NET, and you can compile to .NET 4. Another thing that has been requested at last year's user conference was the ability to set your application namespace in the build settings, and we allow that now. XAML resource dictionaries. Basically, these allow you to easily create language-specific applications, or applications that even can switch language at runtime. We include a new XAML brush editor that allows you to design XAML brushes and then apply the brushes to your tools. And you can apply a XAML style for two controls. For example, if you have a XAML style that you found on the internet and you want to apply that to a standard team developer push button, you can do that very easily now. So, .NET consuming web services. What we have is a new .NET Web Services wizard. It creates a new .NET Web Service interop DLL, and this DLL is automatically included into the open application. So basically what you see on the right is the Web Services wizard. What you provide is a path to the WSDL, and then it will generate an interop assembly, the .dll file, and an AXL file that tells a team developer the details of that, calls of the operations of that web service. And if you want to execute a web service, you basically define a variable and then do variable.operation and pass the parameters. That's all you need to do to call a web service with team developer. Providing .NET Web Service, on the other hand, you can call team developer business logic from any other platform. For example, from ASP.NET HTML applications, from Java applications, from Android applications, from iOS applications. And if you come to our DevConf beginning of November in Stockholm, Hamburg, London, and Paris, we will be showing an Android application that executes a team developer web service, or calls a team developer web service. So basically this gives you ways of leveraging team developer business logic with other operating environments, including smartphones and tablets. How do we do that? Providing .NET Web Services. What we have is a new class, which is a web service class in the outline. Web service classes can have functions for internal processing, so you can write code that is not being exposed in the web service itself, but that you use to program your internal web service code. And operations. Operations are published. So you have two types of things that you can program in a web service that is operations, and those are being then published and made known to other applications via the WSDL file, and the internal functions that you use for your own programming. You will need to deploy those on IIS, on the Microsoft Internet Information Server. And this is how the outline looks like. You see that there's an area of an area of functions, which is internal processing, and there's operations, which is what is going to be exposed in the web service then. And certainly you cannot create, of course, visual code or visual windows in a web service. It's just pure business logic. Local .NET exception handling is the next new thing that comes in Team Developer 6.1. Basically, we allow you to have a new statement called when exception, and you can put that into your local code. And when an exception happens, then the code below when exception will be executed. Additional to when exception, we have a statement called rethrow, which pushes the exceptions to the next level. So you can basically create a queue of exceptions, and at different levels these exceptions will be handled from your code. And there's rethrow, and then there's also rethrow global, which pushes the exception to the global SAMnet exception handling. So very detailed and very nice new exception handling for .NET applications. And you see the code to the right on SAM click, and then you have the when exception handling, where I set a variable to a string variable to a new string, and then I have the rethrow statement in there, and rethrow then moves it up to the next level, which would probably then be the exception handling of the window or another function where this is being called from and things like that. .NET Explorer Enhancements. Now is a resizable window. You can scroll to a row when typing initial characters. So basically you type Unify dot, and then it goes to the Unify controls if you look for Unify controls or Microsoft, whatever. When you generate the interface, you can choose between an APL for Win32 and an AXL for .NET. So that can be done from the Explorer now. And duplicate symbols in AXL files are ignored, so you can include as many AXLs in your application without getting duplicate symbol problems. .NET database support. We've added Sybase support for .NET applications and a new .NET database connection string support, which has an API of SQL Connect.NET, SQL handle, and then the connection string. And that is really a .NET connection string as defined in .NET. And using that one, you can basically connect to anything that supports a connection string. Now coming to DBPipe. DBPipe for WPF desktop apps is the title of the slide. The first part that you see here now in that chart or in that graphic is the DBPipe that we used to have in 6.0 for XBAP browser applications. What we allowed you with DBPipe was to have browser applications that do not have a need for local installation of database clients, like an Oracle client driver, SQL Server client driver, SQL-based client driver. You could install the DBPipe on your IIS machine, and there the database client would be on this machine and would access the database. So if you run the downloaded XBAP app, it uses DBPipe to send and receive the SQL. And to get this working from a programmer's point of view, there was nothing more needed than clicking the checkbox in the build settings, really. And we have extended that now to include that for desktop clients. So basically what we allow you now to create a desktop EXE that doesn't have the need of having a local database client installed. For example, if you have an application that accesses the Oracle database, you can deploy that application without deploying Oracle clients to your user base. And Oracle would be a central Oracle, and from a central server, DBPipe server, you would do the database access. And I will show you that in a minute, really. So DBPipe Benefits is basically a relaxed, easy, no-touch application deployment. No database client required on the user machine. So you have no config hassles, no SQLini, you have no Aura config, whatever that is. That saves the cost of client software and a lot more probably, which is the administration side. If you have a distributed organization that acts worldwide, then this is a huge benefit of having applications that do not need database clients and are basically client configuration free. Build settings. What you can do now is compile to the .NET 2.0 3.5, what we did have in the past. And you can also compile to .NET 4.0, which is the checkbox there, the radio button there on the right, so you can target the latest .NET builds there. You can set the custom app namespace. You see that in the screenshot on the right side. I've set the namespace to my namespace. Before it was simply using the name of the executable file or the name of the application as a namespace, and now you can set that differently. XAML made easy. We have introduced some XAML capabilities in TD 6.0, but they have been rather complicated in that you had to know every detail about XAML and handle those on your own. What we do now provide is XAML app internationalization with runtime language switching. So basically at runtime you can say, now I want to have this application in Spanish, changing from English, for example. What you need to do is you need to provide the string resources, and then in the application you can tell the system to use different language resources now. We have a new XAML brush editor, which allows you to change the design of objects with no XAML coding at all. And you can assign XAML styles to TD objects via Attribute Inspector. And that is, for example, if you want to use the sample that we demonstrated at last year's DEF CON, where we turned a progress bar into a thermometer. You could simply use that XAML and the style definition and just apply that in Attribute Inspector without going into more details and editing the app.xaml file and these things. That's not necessary anymore. So, easy XAML application internationalization. In the resources section of the outline, you have now the resource dictionaries. You see that on the right side, and you can define several external files that contain the language of your application. And with the new APIs, SAL Dictionary Promote, you can actually switch the UI language. So I think the behavior is that automatically TD would use the last resource dictionary in there, and if you say promote, then it would use the one you promote to. And you can also do SAL Dictionary Lookup String, which basically lets you search for a string resource in the resource dictionary. So with easy XAML, easy design of brush resources. You can assign brushes to an object foreground or background in Attribute Inspector. If you're running in Win32, those values will be ignored, of course. Here's what that looks like in the Attribute Inspector. You see the background brush there and the text brush, and you see that the background brush has been assigned a name of button background, which is a brush that has been defined. And this is a screenshot of the brush editor that allows you to create the brushes using gradients and gradient stops, angles. You can create solid brushes, linear brushes, radial brushes. You can set the transparency, opacity. So a pretty neat little tool. And if you assign this a brush to a button, for example, then you get the result of what I show you now. Here is that colored button there that starts with blue, goes into yellow, and then goes into orange with gradients. So with styles, assign custom styles to TD objects. So basically, you can turn a progress bar into a speedometer, and those are only examples. And that's not all you can do. You can do a lot with that. And what you have is in Attribute Inspector for controls, you have the XAML style, and you can enter the key of XAML style into there, and then it will automatically convert this at runtime into the new style for you. So, for example, in this case here, you see the progress bar on top, how as it is defined, and at runtime this would show up as a speedometer. There are a few new language features in TD 6.1. One is enhanced.NET SAL compile and evaluate support. Basically, you can call your own functions and methods from SAL compile and evaluate now. And we have a new API, which is SAL-is.NET. SAL-is.NET, here's the definition of that. Basically, it tells you on what platform you are running. And it tells you if you're running on Win32, if you're running as a WPF desktop application, if you're running as a WPF browser application, if you are a SAL library, a .NET library, or if it is a web service. So basically, the build target is being returned to you, and you can then create build target specific code. Okay, so now after the introduction, what we have here, let me show you what that means to you. The first thing I want to do is let me start Team Developer here. And the first thing is web service providing. Now the first thing I want to do is create a web service and deploy that web service so that I can then create applications that use that web service. And I do have a web service application or a web service prepared here. And you see the new outline again. And you see this web service class, my web service here, has functions and operations. And the function has actions. For example, in this function, I do set the database parameters, SQL database, SQL user, SQL password. And in operations, so this is for just internal things. And in operations, what I do is, for example, I do call internal processing. So that's my internal function. And then I do a connect to the database. If that does fail, then I do return a connect failed. That is basically the string that the web service client will receive then. If it receives connect failed, then he knows that that didn't work. But there's also more complex web services error handling that you can use. And we will describe that in details at our DevCons in early November. So basically what this web service does is it queries the island database and selects the contact email into a variable and fetches through all the contact emails and returns a string of contact emails to the calling application. So simple one, but shows the concept. In build settings, I do have .NET application, .NET web service, and now with build I create that. Okay, and that now worked. Let me show you that. Web service providers and directory. And what it created now is this my web service.dll, which you can now copy to IIS, Internet Information Server, and this ASMX file that you need to copy to IIS as well. I did do that already, and let me switch to the IIS directory, which is c-inetpub root, and then web services directory, friends is my web service here. And what you can see here is the my web service.asmx file, which is the configuration file for the web service, and in the binary directory, I have the my web service.dll that has been created by team developer. I also have a web.config file where I need to tell the system where my SQL INI and all these things are. And now let me test that web service. First of all, I will test this using Internet Explorer. Oops, sorry, I'm showing you something that I didn't want to show yet. That's for later demo. This is hello. It's starting. It did start the application. So here, this is what IIS and Internet Explorer offer you as means for testing web services. What you can do is in your URL you have that .ismx file with a question mark and then the operation you want to execute, for example, and then you can execute that web services right from Internet Explorer. If I call it here, then it opens another tab of that browser, and what you see here is the return string from the web service, which is all the email addresses from the contacts table. That's what I have programmed in Team Developer. So this is the testing here, and now what I really want to do is create an application that calls this web service. And in this case, I create a Team Developer application, and I want to see the whistle for this web service, and here's the whistle of this web service as displayed in Internet Explorer. It contains all the things this web service can do, and I want to copy this URL here for my TD app to access this web service. So let me go to Team Developer and create a new application here. So here's a new application Then let me switch to build settings, .NET build type, .NET WPF desktop, and then I go to the tools menu and go to the web services wizard. And now I just provide the URL that I've copied from Internet Explorer, which is the WSDL file. I can provide authentication if you have built authentication into your system. And then it provides me the output file names, the DLL, AXL, and the interop namespace. Now I just provide the directory where I should create those. So here in the WS directory. And now I press the generate button. And now I get, what I did get is the client DLL. Let's have a look into my directory again. Going back from the Internet Explorer, Internet Information Server directory to the web services. Here is the WS directory. And here's the DLL that has just been created, 10:27, 5:27 p.m., and the AXL file that has been included into my application here. Now, to test that, let me create a window, new form window, and what I need is then a button that executes this web service. Give me back the list of friends, and I do also want a text box, multi-line text box that displays the return from this web service. Max data length, I need to ramp that up a bit, 10,000. Word wrap on so you can see everything. Okay. And now let's just do a double click on here and I get the on-SAM click message. I need to define the web service as a variable now. And this one is here, my web service. Just let me call that friends, the variable name. And then what I do on-SAM click is I do a set ML1 equals friends dot my friends, and that's all in this case because that web service doesn't have other parameters. So now I can test that, save it, vs.app. And now press the friends button, and I have the return from the web service here. So that is how easy you can provide and consume web services using Team Developer 6.1. Now coming back to DBPipe. DBPipe, as I mentioned, allows you to create a central instance for your database access. What I have on my machine here is really, let me close this here, is a number of, or two different types of applications that access DBPipe now. And what I want to show you here is the configuration I'm using. I do have a remote desktop open to a machine that sits in Roseville, California, basically in the Unify headquarters. And this remote desktop has the DBPipe server view open. And the server view displays a little bit like the SQL-based server screen, what's going on and what requests are coming in. You can set the level of detail you want to see there, for example. For this demonstration, let me clear the logs so that we can see everything exactly when it's coming in. And the first thing I want to show you is a WPF desktop application, so a desktop.NET application, this one here, which opens now, and this application allows me to choose the back-end database. On this machine in Roseville in California, we have Oracle, SQL Server, and SQL Base running, and from that application I can choose the database targets. This application, this DBPipe application here, now is running in Munich, Germany. So you see a worldwide access using our new DBPipe technology. And let me use SQL Server here. Oh, well, no, here use Oracle. And if I press go, then you should see the things happening on the right side on the DBPipe server. There's been a connection being made, SQL statements being executed, and then control to the application being returned when this processing has been done. So what you see here is really over the internet database access without installed database clients on my machine in Munich here. This client application, I can click different things and you will see that different queries are being executed in our headquarters. And this application has been deployed using our built-in installer, and there's no database client whatsoever installed for Oracle on my machine. There's not Oracle installed on my local machine, not SQL Server, and I can access this via DBPipe. Now let's clear that log again, and now let me open Internet Explorer again. And this is the part that really was available already with TD 6.0, and now let's use SQL Server instead of Oracle. And now again, if you look at the DBPipe server in Roseville, you see that a connection to SQL Server is being established, then a number of queries are being executed on that SQL Server, and the data is being returned to my machine in Munich and being displayed in a browser application here. And in this case, you really don't have anything to deploy to a client machine. You just give the client machine the URL, that it downloads this application and execute that application absolutely clientless, which is very interesting and a very, very powerful way of deploying your applications. So, and you can of course click on different users here, and then you see in the background that the DBPipe server executes something on Oracle and sends the information back. Okay, that's basically the demonstration here that I want to give to you. And now let's move on with the presentation here. In summary, what we provide with TD 6.1, a much improved high usability IDE, richer and new GUI controls, easier table window migration to .NET, and powerful .NET integration and more .NET power for your applications. And here we are with questions and answers now. Let me just mention again that we are having developers conferences in Hamburg, Stockholm, London, and Paris later in November. Go onto unify.com to get the details. So you can now put your questions into the WebEx question tool. If you read the Unify blog on blog.unify.com, you will also see a lot of information about TD 6.1, basically as a summary of everything. But if you want to get in-depth details about, using DBPipe, configuring DBPipe, using web services, then you should really come to our developers conferences, as they will give you all the details in 1 or 2 days. So there are no questions coming in. Oh, here. When is the 6.1 version available? We expect the 6.1 version to be available very early next year, January, February timeframe. Well, it looks like there are no further questions then. In this case, thank you very much for attending this webinar, and I look forward to meet you at the developers conferences or in coming webinars. Thank you very much, and good day or good evening wherever you are. Goodbye.